Howdy everyone, I'm Wonderbeard and today we're going to do a recap of Season 1, The War Within. So to get us started, let's do a quick introduction of, what I do in the game and what I don't do in the game. So I'm a very average BM hunter. So what does that mean exactly? I don't do much in the way of Mythic or even Mythic Plus. So the guild that I'm in, we strive for AOTC. That's about what we push to. So heroic is where we live. Heroic gear is what I get for the most part. If a season is friendly to BM hunters in Mythic Plus, then I'll do a little bit of Mythic Plus. We'll talk more about Mythic Plus, but this season was definitely not friendly to BM hunters. So um, did not do much this season. So I'll talk a little bit about that in the Mythic Plus section. But just want to be clear, I'm not in a top 100 guild, Hall of Fame guild, or anything like that. So, you can tell me to get good or whatever, but I am what I am. I'm casual. I got a full time job. Play this in my free time. Try to do the best I can, but I'm not playing 12, 14 hours a day. I'm more in the 2.5 hours. We raid twice a week for 2.5 hours is the designated time that we've got together as a guild. Obviously, put in more than that, but that's a little bit of where I'm going to be coming from in this video. So, I just kind of wanted to set that expectation of, what I do and, going back prior to Dragonflight, I wasn't even a raider, so I was, as the Potty C would call me, a mole person, stuck with professions and leveling characters and collecting pets and things like that. That was pretty much my world. I didn't do dungeons at all, even not even Mythic Plus. I mean, not even you know, heroic dungeons. So that's one of the challenges that I get into with Mythic Plus is I don't know the dungeons. I never did them. So even the old ones. So I'm learning mechanics, what to do, kind of across the board, which is a challenge, along with learning the new uh, nuances and new everything that comes with things. So um, first thing I want to talk about, we'll just kind of get into things here, is professions. I hear this. I don't. Anytime people talk about changes from Dragonflight to the War Within, they kind of skip over professions, and I know there weren't dramatic changes, but there were a couple things that were pretty significant. So, the first is, we've had these trees from Dragonflight. Not a lot changed with them in the War Within. I do think having a whole, um, expansion to learn and coming into a new expansion made this a lot easier for the casual type person to come into and learn. So I think keeping it the same was a very good non-change. There wasn't a lot to really relearn here, and they just just introduced the ability to respec once, which I think is a good change as well. You know, you get off to a bad start, it can be rough to catch up, especially on alts. Um, but the one big change that I think has gone very well, and I was very excited about, is this little Patreon section here. The ability to still get orders and do professions without relying on public orders, I think was just a really good change. It was rough, when they first came out, you had like 20 or 30 or something public orders that you could get. They moved that down to four because they were just drastically out of balance there. Uh, there's just not enough orders that come in through this to really, do your weeklies. I was having to in Dragonflight send things over to, send orders that I didn't even really want to do just to fill the weekly. So it's nice to not have to do that and being able to go to these Patreon orders and finish those. You get a little gold, you get the acuity that comes along with it, profession points. That's all been really good. So I think that's a really good change that really happy that Blizzard put in. So happy to see that. Not a lot else changed with this season. If you're an herb or an ore miner or herbalist, you got a little bit of a change with the overload just because the elemental things that we dealt with in Dragonflight aren't here. I'm not as huge a fan in the War Within of what they did with the overloads, but it's not a make or break thing there. The one thing I will say is the exploding ore. Just not a big fan of that personally. Especially right in the beginning, it was rough to even get those accomplished without dying. The basically a one-shot mechanic early on just kind of made that rough. So, all in all, not dramatic changes to professions, but the Patreon orders I think were real good. I think there's a lot of good that could come from that. They did the catch-up mechanics, which are nice too. Um, you can kind of see I'm pretty caught up on this character, but even the Patreon crafting orders I'm behind here. So you can see being able to have the ability to take a week off and not play a character and have the ability to come back and get caught up is really nice. And this character's a Skinner also, and being able to spend a few hours and just catch up for taking time off has been nice. All right, next topic we'll talk about is a new feature for the War Within, which is the delves. Um, as I mentioned in the intro, former mole person, I think the delves would have been really great back in that time period for me. That would have been top gear that I would have never been able to accomplish. Getting some of that heroic level gear. So I think for that level of player, the delves are really nice. For your top guilds, guilds that are doing mythics, delves aren't going to be really beneficial. They may be fun. I mentioned the Podyssey before. I like to watch Dratnos and his videos. He used them to ensure that he could get the tokens and get a socket if he didn't get a good piece out. So I think that's a good use of delves for that type of person. One thing that was interesting for my guild, kind of being in that AOTC where heroic is the gear level that we're getting for the most part, it made many of our members get gear very quickly. Um, and then in turn, we ended the season really early. We ended basically right before Christmas. So we've been dead for, over 2 months. So 2.5 months essentially before we kind of get back together. And that's a long time to kind of take off. And I think Delves contributed to that a little bit in the sense that people were just getting gear a lot easier and quicker and lost interest because there wasn't really anything for them to obtain since we weren't, doing mythic raids. Um, so I think maybe there's some things potentially to do with delves to help with the gear curve there, but that's one impact that we ran into with delves. Overall, though, I think they're reasonably fun. The difficulty it isn't too bad. Obviously you're going for tier 8s to get your top vaults, and so from my standpoint, that's kind of where I stuck. I did push on to 11s just to kind of get the achievement. They weren't super hard. It just there's a lot of health in those mobs, so everything just took a little bit longer. Um, but I think maybe there's something to do there that could make them a little more mechanical and a little bit on the higher levels, especially like the 11s and above. So I think that would be a very interesting thing to do with delves. So maybe something to explore there. I know they don't want to hand out mythic gear, but maybe there's a path there to kind of get some Mythic gear from the vault, kind of like they do with Mythic Plus down the road. That might have helped my guild if there was a potential to, do 12s or 15s or whatever and get, Mythic gear in the vault. That some of those people would have stuck around. I probably would have done more in the delve space if that was a possibility. Um, but I get if you do too many sources of Mythic gear, it's hard to balance and difficult to get people interested in doing everything. I know the raid is, one of the bigger pieces of the game, so you want to make sure people are doing raids and not just stuck in solo content forever. So overall, I think that Delve's a good change, good feature. So happy overall, but looking forward to tweaks as we move forward. Um, so let's talk a little bit about Mythic Plus here. Like I said, I'm not a big Mythic Pluser even in the good times. I will say Season 1 was not a good time for Mythic Plus for people like me. Uh, the time to reward ratio was way out of balance. Um, you know, if you weren't in a meta comp or have really good players around you, or you are yourself a really good player, um, you're really going to struggle to get a lot of the rewards that you are going to need. We just talked about delves a little bit, so you're getting heroic gear relatively easily through the delve system, and you're going to come in and um, get into Mythic Plus, and you're going to try to do sixes, sevens, eights. Eights is kind of where you want to get, and those are just way too hard for someone to just step in and try to do as an average player. With not even probably having a meta comp. Um, you're lucky if you can even finish, but you're not going to be able to time like that. The few that I did try with my guild, I was playing with, the better players in my guild, and we didn't finish sixes, halfway through the season, um, you know, because of the comps that we had and the difficulty curve. It just, for me, I tried a few and, saw what it was going to take to try to even get some gear, and it just wasn't worth it. Like I said, I'm going to get heroic gear from delves and from the heroic raids, so I really needed to get that mythic gear and those gilded crests, and pushing to that level of Mythic Plus was just out of my bounds. It just made it too difficult, so I didn't even try. I probably did less than 5. I don't know if I can see. I think the season's over at this point, so yeah. So I did, you know, got to 1440 rating. Um, that's my guild. So you can see, like I did 2 8s, City of the Reds and Stone Vault. Um, so both of those are City Threads we did time, it looks like, but Stone Vault's overtime. You did a 7, 5, 6, 2. I didn't even do Necrotic Wake or Grimbatol. Necrotic Wake. I watched some people on VOD trying to do some of those, and it wasn't even something I was remotely interested in trying to do. Um, so, um, yeah, just something that I just totally ignored for the most part this season. In Dragonflight, I was getting over 2K rating, just from playing and, not really pushing, just to try to get, my mythic vault slot, essentially is what I was going for there. And um, this season it just not obtainable, so no real interest to me. The AF exchange, we'll talk about a little bit, because I think overall that was a good change. Um, some of those affixes were just brutal, and I'm glad to not see those again. So I think the affix change was good enough. It just, the other changes, with the tank and healing, um, not being as effective, um, especially on the tank side, healing more so that you had to heal the tanks more. Um, just made that, you know, not be able to see the good come from that. Um, you know, so, Mythic Plus, not my thing normally. Definitely not my thing this season. Got some changes coming up for season 2, so I'm gonna give it a shot, see how things go. Um, but yeah, that's Mythic Plus. So let's talk about Crests and Valor Stones. So this all kind of reset on me now that we're a few days away from season 1, but you can see I'm already capped on the season 2 Valor Stones, which leads me to Valor Stones are just crap. Like, there is no good that come from these things. Like, if the intent of Blizzard is to get people to do some of the more world content and that kind of thing, what's it matter if I'm on my hunter versus my mage versus my priest, etc.? Let me trade my Valor Stones so I'm not sitting a cap on this hunter the entire season, and then all of my alts have no Valor Stones and many, many crests. Um, you know, we got towards Christmas and they made the changes with the crests, which I think were really good changes. Less to trade up and less to turn into the things to trade in for gear, crafted gear. So I think those were really good changes at the end of the season to make. Uh, but I didn't get to recognize many of that because of the Valor Stones. Um, you know, I can't even imagine how much crazy content I would have had to do just to get enough Valor Stones to upgrade a few pieces of gear. I've got hundreds of crests, or had hundreds of crests on those characters, but I couldn't do anything with them because I needed Valor Stones. And even doing some of the content that I didn't mind as much, like the Awakening Machine uh, thing, it just didn't provide enough Valor Stones to warrant the time investment. And like I said, I'm sitting on 2,000 on my Hunter for the majority of the season, and even when I'm not, it's even more frustrating because it's really hard to farm Valor Stones, especially if you're not doing Mythic Plus content. Um, and I mean, sure, I could have gone through dungeons, I guess, but where's the fun in that of like just being over geared for something completely and just running through it? So, um, the only time I really needed Valor Stones on the Hunter is if when I got my weapon from raid and needed to upgrade it because it cost an insane amount of Valor Stones to upgrade weapons. So I burned through all of those, but next raid week I was back up again and capped and not able to do anything with them, and just sitting on things. I've got 2,000, but I knew I was going to go over, so I've got two of these 100 Valor Stone satchels just sitting there because I knew I didn't need them right now. So I'm just gonna save them for when I get to raid, and if I get a weapon or something, I can upgrade it and have these kind of in reserve, so I don't have to go try to farm uh, Valor Stones. That's just the worst. Um, so I'd love for them just to get rid of Valor Stones, but if they're really intent on wanting people to do content to try to keep people engaged that way, then let us trade them. Because if you want people to do content, you got to do them on somebody. So let me do them on my hunter and trade them. Um, but otherwise, they're just a nuisance that makes the game not fun to play. The the crest system overall, I think, is really good. Really enjoyed when they made the change to make things cost less. It was nice to be able to upgrade twice from a full cap level of runs, um, opposed to just the one upgrade. You know, trading a 90 to get 15 um, Gilded Crest. Instead, trading the 45 to get two uh, 215, so 30. Made that really nice. You know, as someone that was kind of boxed out of Mythic Blast, Gilded Crest were really hard to come by, especially since our guild um, struggled to get through Ansarac. Struggle is a little wrong, so probably not the right word. We're just a little bit slower overall, but not terribly slow. Um, so, um, but we weren't accumulating tons of Gilded Crests. Although I will say it was nice to be able to get some off of Silken Cord and Ansarac, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to get any other than the trade-ins, which would have been just brutally slow and really would have made the champion gear fully equivalent to heroic gear and basically would have completely boxed out heroic raids from getting gear. Even as it was pretty rough. You know, you get your 619 and you know, it takes Gilded Crest, it takes mythic content to upgrade your heroic piece to 626, which seems very weird. You know, the Silken Cord and Ansarac drops aside there, but um, you know, I just I'm glad they did that. Otherwise, it would have been really really bad to you know, get heroic gear. Um, so yeah, last but not least, the raids. I'll probably do a bigger video. We'll see. It's kind of I got to this later than I wanted to, but so maybe I won't do a full overview of the raid. But you know, looking at the raid as a whole, I think it was a really fun raid overall. Um, some of the bosses were a little rough. You know, Brood Twister for a guild like mine. You know, we're stuck in weak aura hell for the most part. You know, it took us at least a full raid clear just to get the weak auras and add-ons and everything aligned with everyone on the guild so that we could make sure people were breaking the right eggs and all that stuff. So that's not quite as fun, but the fight itself was kind of cool. I just wish it wasn't quite so intensive. You know, maybe something to make it more obvious um, which ones you should break or something like that would have made that a little bit more manageable from our side of things. I know the Race to World First guilds and all that stuff, they worked through that really quickly. This wasn't as quick for us. Kaiveza was another one that I think the fight was okay overall. It just, my guild's not good with shapes, so you know, trying to draw those boxes and you know, keep things aligned properly, we struggled a little bit. So you know, those two bosses being in the middle um, took us a couple weeks to get through those, a few weeks to kind of get through those um, fights. Silken Court took us a bit too. I think it's a pretty cool fight. It was a little rough for me coming into the season and being asked to be one of the web people. Um, I was just doing a lot of changes to you know, how I play the game overall. Um, so that was an additional thing that I was trying to work through. So I wiped our raid more than a few times just from not being able to do what I needed to do with the webs. Once we got that under control, you know, everything went relatively well. You know, for guilds like mine though, when you assign people to do certain things, and if that person either stops playing or misses a week, it's hard to sub someone in. Silken Court was a little rough there. You know, I didn't miss much on the raids, but the other web people missed occasionally, so we'd have to sub someone in, and that one wasn't too bad because we already had some backups because you needed them for that phase 3. but it really hurt us on Ansarac. That's where we felt the pain with the poppers because you needed so many of them. So we had 3 or 4 people that were around pretty much all season. So that meant 2 or 3 weren't. So especially as we got down towards the end, we were even struggling to get 10 people to show up those last couple raids. So um, people learning popping just made the re-clear of Ansarac really hard for us. But overall, it was a really cool fight. Phase 1 was just a little too hard, I think, for even when we got there. Um, it just took, one minor mistake and you're wiping the raid. That's rough in a guild my size. It's not, you know, we're getting 20, 30 pulls on it a week. Um, as we're trying to re-clear the rest of it. Once we got the rest of that on farm pretty good, we were getting more. But if you're in 20 and 30, and you got 15 people, one person makes 2 mistakes a night, and that's all your wipes right there for the most part. So you really needed people to execute and be good, which is I think what they're going for with a final boss. They want to make it difficult, but uh, I wish it was maybe not quite so um, one mistake wipes you heavy. I think if they could get away from that a little bit, make it to where um, it hurts to mess something up, but maybe doesn't completely wipe you the first time. Maybe do something twice, and that gets you that might be a good alternative there. But going through the bosses here, Ulgrax, first boss, it's okay. The intermission there where you have to go feed him, and basically doing no DPS that entire time. Not the greatest experience, but it's a first boss, and it wasn't that hard to do, so I can kind of get past that. Bloodbound Horror. I actually think this was a pretty cool fight. With the little washing machine agitator that comes out, and you gotta kind of work around that. I think that was a nice little thing to kind of do. And again, it's second fight, so not real hard, but you gotta have a little bit of organization. So I think relatively good ramp there. Sikran, it's okay fight. I don't think there's anything crazy there. You had to be a little bit more mechanically aware and make sure you place things properly, especially in the early days when your DPS wasn't as high, because you could run out of room on the floor. Crashing, I think, was a really cool fight. I think some of the mechanics that they had there, with the rolling acid, was kind of cool. It flies around the room. You got to run, do all that fun stuff. I thought from a mechanic standpoint, this is kind of what I'm talking about with Ansarac. If rolling acid, you needed to get it right, but if you didn't, it didn't necessarily wipe your raid, which I think was good. Um, it hurt, and everyone felt it if you didn't go to your right side, and we had that happen, in the beginning a few times. But I think that's a good mechanic that was well implemented overall. So I thought Rashanan was, I'm talking from a heroic perspective on all of these bosses. I really only saw Ulgrax and Bloodbound Horror personally on the mythic side of things. So, I know there's some differences as you get deeper into these um, on the mythic side. Kind of talked about all these other ones already, but I thought the raid overall was really solid. You're an 8 boss fight, so not a super long raid, which for our guild wasn't necessarily bad. I think it did contribute to us ending earlier since there was one less boss there in the middle. But I think I think I enjoyed this raid. I'm looking forward to the next one. I think the the gambling and goblin theme that they're kind of leaning into here should be really cool. So looking forward to that, and we'll do another one of these at the end of season 2 and see what we think of everything. But for now, appreciate everyone tuning in. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and we'll catch you on the next one.